Ladies and gentlemen, Bwanzi, welcome to our podcast. Zikomo for joining us wherever you are. Today's episode is going to be an amazing episode. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Agness Shekinah Lungu. I won't go in detail about who she is. So as you can do the take, this is who I am. So Agnes, take us. Let the people know who you are.
Agness Lungu. Nchokera Kusaka. But right now I'm in the US. I'm studying intelligent systems engineering. Currently a senior, so graduating this May. I have a minor in mathematics as well and journalism. I'm very passionate about everything feminism, politics, Pan-Africanism. So excited to be chatting with you guys today.
Oh wow.
Nice.
It's unheard of for someone to study that many courses at once. What's going on?
Not major in engineering, to my mind, mathematics. As an engineer, you already have to take so many math classes. I'm like, I might as well. And I really did enjoy my math classes.
Yeah.
So I was like, I might as well just add the few to get the minor. Then I came in as a double major. So capoeira, I don't know, I was feeling too excited. I came in as like a engineering and media major. Quickly figured out that that was not going to fly. I was like, how
Yeah.
do I do this? How do I do this? I might have overestimated myself. This is actually not high school. Because I came in, they were like, oh, you have to only take like 15 credits. I was like, oh, that's like 5 courses. And then I was looking at my schedule before I'd actually done this whole US university experience. And I'm like, you're telling me I'm having 3 classes a day? What do I do with the rest of my time? I was like, add me 18 credits. I came in first semester, I was doing 19 credits. Second semester, 19. And then I was like, oh, okay. Okay, makes sense.
Makes
Makes sense.
sense.
I was like, drop me out of this. Like, how can I make this more? So I ended up with a minor because I am really interested in media. So,
What's
like,
what's the
Hmm?
what's the one advantage of having all these minors, in your opinion?
What's one advantage? I wouldn't say it's about advantage, more so it's about interest and how much of your interest you can explore.
Are you still there?
So I know I want to write in some form or in some way, shape, or form. When my first semester, I was writing for the Indiana Daily Student under the Black Voices desk, and I loved it. So I knew that to write, I wanted to take more like writing, courses, journalism centered. Because also I believe as Africans we need to tell our stories by us. So I was just exploring the interests I had, and then with math, like I said, as an engineer, you take a lot of math classes, and but also that I think builds your foundation. If having a math minor, because you do a lot of applied engineering, is a lot of applied mathematics. So I think there's a benefit in how much you understand things, the depth of understanding. For me, it's not. I don't think I was thinking it was going to take me somewhere. And once I was thinking, I'm really interested in this stuff. I'm just going to do as much of these things as I can. So I was needing a few more classes to get the minor. So I'm like, I'll do this for the breath. I guess you just understand more. And I was really enjoying my math classes. So I was like, yeah, I'll take it.
Sweet. Wow. That's great. I like the point that you brought up of us telling our stories.
Yeah.
I think that's the entire purpose of us having this entire conversation, right? So much that we have to learn from each other.
Yeah.
So, Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
Big word. Big word.
Yeah.
How did you get yourself into that? Like, how did you develop the interest? Does anything stand out growing up that you think,
Oh, that's a good question. Pan-African. Yeah, it is a big word. I don't think there's one specific moment, but over the years there's been realization, or maybe I think I always wondered. Okay, I think when you ask questions, you wonder at some point. I'm like, I started to learn my identity as an African. And I'm like, but why Africans? Why are we where we are? Our media is very negative. I was wanting, so it came from wanting to understand our position now, and I think as a kid, I was just understanding that you don't get that African identity until you get to leave and maybe you interact with other, like back in Zambia, you don't think yourself as Zambian or like as African. You're just a person. You're just living. Yeah, I was just living in Osaka, but like when you start to interact with other people who are different, then you have to identify your identity, and then in identifying and getting that identity, I was understanding what it meant to be an African, and it comes with a lot of negative stereotypes. And so I was wanting to understand like why are we where we're at. So I started to read more. I was reading books by Aweda Mandela, and I read Kaunda's books, wanting to understand the struggle for freedom. And then I also went to a good one is African Science Academy, where I did my A levels. And over there we used to have these weekly sessions, and our head teacher was a big Pan Africanist. She was a Ghanaian woman who was raised in the UK. And we used to have these deep discussions about, like what was Kwame Nkrumah's dream, or like, why is someone like Gaddafi such a controversial figure? Or like Winnie Mandela, why is he such a controversial figure? And you start to, and then I guess I was understanding like, as Africans, we actually do have a story that we don't take time to understand, that our school system is not really teaching us even. And I'm like, it's from that understanding of that story that we can create a better future for ourselves. So that's,
Huh.
I don't know if I'm making sense. How about you guys? What's your experience with Pan Africanism?
Well, this podcast is about you, but I'll tell my story. I'm still learning about it. I think it's a constant process of, like you said, learning more about our historical figures, what they, reading their books and what knowledge they have to impart in us.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I've read a lot about Kenneth Kaunda and what he's done. I've actually jotted down him, like when you mentioned him. I need to learn more about him. It's actually KK Day as we're recording this podcast. It's his
Really? I didn't
birthday.
know that.
Hey, now you do. Um, but I do know it's important to know your roots, know
Yeah.
your history, and I'm still learning more about Pan-Africanism and what it's all about. So I wouldn't comment much on it, which is why I'm asking you the question so that I can know more about it.
So,
Okay. You can go ahead, Jackson.
oh no, no, I just wanted to say, for me, like growing up, I was always curious about the purpose of life. The hardest question, the hardest question you can ask. And so I
Yeah.
was always wondering to say, why are we here? I grew up Christian, so my beliefs were in that Christian aspect. I was always asking myself, I grew up poor, so I was always asking myself, why did we grow up this way? Why are some
Mm,
people, why can some people afford food and we cannot? What is the reasoning behind that? And then as I got more exposure, I got to learn of, our history, where we came from, we were colonized, all this was happening. And then the idea of, being an African child was developed in me, learning our African history, where we came from, how that impacted our current lives, and what to do going forward. And that's where my ideology of Pan-Africanism comes from, understanding where we came from, why the things that happened in the past happened, the lessons we can get from those, and how we can change whatever we learned from there and hopefully change our futures. And so I've always been that curious person, and growing up, being exposed, this ideology of being an African child was developed in me.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, wow. You were thinking deeply at a young age. I don't think I dawned on me that I was poor until I was maybe in grade like until I went to boarding school, honestly, in grade 8. And then I'm people coming with full trunks, two trunks to school. You're scraping to get your trunk full, and I'm thinking like, wait, what? I think I knew
Mm.
of rich people, but like those were them, and I was me. Like I never really thought or asked like why are they them. I just accepted until I went to boarding school. People were talking about we go on holiday. They was like, "Oh, what did you do?" I'm just like, I was home. There's a sungawana pa nyumba. People, were, "Oh, we went to South Africa." I was like, "Wait, you?" I couldn't find like the whole family stood up to go to South Africa. We had never gone on a trip anywhere. Tenzoenda kumuzi kwenda ona vachi blue. Like,
Wow.
that's the best trip I've ever taken. And so only then, now you were thinking way earlier than it started to dawn on me. And then I was like, damn, I'm
Yeah.
actually cool. Like, because when you know when you're poor, you know people in the hood who are doing this for you. You know? So me, I used to think I was doing okay. I know it's just my going jara. Oh, I'm a neighbor, but I'm a pop quite every day.
Right.
So
Sorry, am I allowed
stemming
to
from
speak
that,
Nyanjo?
then
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
you can
Okay,
speak Nyanja. Uh,
okay.
so stemming from that, um, where does the interest in science come from? Is it from an early age, or is this something that's recent?
I think it's from an early age. Um, I think I used to be a competitive person. So going to
Hmm.
school, I think it was one area in which, you know how in African countries, if you're doing well, they really push you. I think they push the students who are doing well, and I think to the fault of the ones who are not doing well. Like, so I was getting this attention from teachers from a young age, and like, so I'd been being, you be number one in class, and like, I don't know. I was liking it, I guess, like, and I was wanting to be number one, and then like, if I wasn't like, one time I was like number three, and I cried my eyes out. And like my mom was like, you're actually doing okay. I think I was just competitive, and I knew the person who got number one. I was like, next semester I'm coming for you. Like, so like next term, I'm like, next term, Dina, I'm the one who's going to be number one. And I just had that competitive, like, so I think I just had that competitive energy with me for a long time. And then let's say coming to like grade seven, you started to understand. I knew people used to tell me I was good at math, and I genuinely found it easier. And I was interested in science because I think I've always been a curious person, and I've always asked the why. Like there's this story I always tell. Me and my mom, Tenzonkara, we used to stay in this house which had no electricity. Like, no, it did have electricity, but we lived in a house in an area where Malaitians went down morning. We used to have a lot of power cuts. So one time we're sitting outside, my mom is cooking, and like I looked at the moon, and I was like, but how come, mommy? Like, there's light over there. Our house has no
Hmm.
light. And we're just sitting. I was like, why don't we get that big light and we put it in our house? And like, I think I used to ask a lot of the why questions. I'm like, why? She was like, oh, she looked at me. I think she was just tired of me. It wasn't the first time I asked her questions that she wasn't wanting to answer. So she was just like, you know what, why don't you do it? And I remember like the whole day, like I would, with my friends, would get sticks. I was making a ladder that I was saying I was going to put against the house, and I would climb up to get the light and put it in our house. That was my project I had started. I don't know when I stopped following that project, but I think I've always like been curious about things and like asked the why. And I think physics, when I went to like science and physics, was one of those in which like you could ask the whys of the universe, and like there was answers
Yeah.
that people were discovering and learning that there's a process for asking those questions and discovering. I think it's just really interesting, and I felt challenged because I said I was very competitive, so I loved the challenge, I guess. And I think I went to like boarding school. Physics was one of my favorite subjects because I was always arguing with the physics teacher. He would say this, I'd be like, nah, prove it. He'd be like, bro, we're not, can we finish this? Can we finish? He would have to be like, you keep quiet. Like, Agnes, keep quiet today. We're finishing this lesson. And then like he'll be like, "Okay, come to my lab and we'll like prove this. I'll show you that this is true. Like, show me that for real gravity is 10. Who found it? When? How?" And it's like, "Okay, but you will learn that in like a later grade." And I'm just like, "Tell me now." So I think I always wanted to know the whys, and later, like after when I was graduating, it was like, since you were in my class, I started studying. Because like you would ask me questions no one had ever asked me, and I'd been teaching this subject for so long, and I got comfortable. So I was scared to come to class because, like, sometimes I'll ask him questions in front of students, and he doesn't know the answer, and he doesn't want to look unprepped. At one time, like the physics department, the head was in our class, and he's teaching. And he was even like, you're one of my good students. Like, continue asking questions. So me, I'm just vibing with the flow. And I asked him a question. Dude doesn't know what to do. Like, and then the teacher is
Mm.
like the head of the department is there, like looking at him, like waiting for him to answer the question. And he's just like, maybe we'll have to research that a little bit. And then I say, well, why would you do that to me? I was like, you told me to bring myself on. So yeah, I loved my physics classes, and in high school I was involved with jets. Um, I represented my school in the jets like quizzes for like math, science, general knowledge. So I think I was on that path for a while in like different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being being a competitive person, how does that work for you in terms of when you don't get what you want?
I think part of growing is realizing that I'm not always going to get what I want. Like I think it's
Hmm.
different from when like I was in grade 7 and I wasn't number one, I would cry. And like I'm like,
Mm.
what am I? What? And now it's just like I think competition has changed from other people, me competing with other people. It's more become about me
Mm.
competing with myself. Because honestly, what happened when
Oh,
I went to ASA, African Science Academy, where it's a
Hmm.
school where they get like girls every year, 20, about 20, 22 girls every year. I think now they've doubled the number, I don't know, from different countries who are all good in their own
Hmm.
countries. One girl from Togo, she was the best science student, awarded the best science student in the whole country. We were having math
Wow.
wizards. West Africans math and sciences. Oh, when I went to the school and I think I failed for the first time. And it's like I was one,
Mm.
like everyone was good there. So you can't be like, oh, I'm number one. Like, there are times when I'm just at the back of the class and I'm just like, what? That broke my reality.
Yeah.
Like I had to go through that process of like failing. I'm like, I've become those people in class who are just looking and it's blank.
Wow.
Like, in high school, I was leading the class. Sometimes I've already understood the thing a long time ago. I'm just making jokes with people. But like,
Mm.
I think in African Science Academy, I was like, wow, I was struggling. Like I struggled to a point where I was trying so hard, and I was still like, my grades were not. I wasn't number one in class. I wasn't. So it had to be something. I had to be confronted with my own competitiveness, and like, if I'm gonna, why in my own value was like tied to how good I was doing academically. So when I wasn't doing academically, I just went through a tough. I like shut down, but I had good mentors at the school. My head teacher, she's someone who just saw a lot of value in me. And she sat down and was talking to me and like, you came in, you were so bright. She was like, you were so excited to try out so many things. And I was just like, I feel like I'm not good at anything. I feel like I try and I'm failing. And I'm like, I'm understanding like students who would, you give it your best and I had never gone through that experience of like failing like a class. You take a test, you're getting like 60 or like 40. I got like a 20 there. So for the first time, I was like, okay, am I too dumb? 20%. So it was a
Yeah.
rough process of understanding of this. And then through all of that, I had to find value in myself another way. And being like, I will
Mm.
not always be the smartest person in the room, but I have to understand what I bring to the table, my experience. And like learning is about the love to know rather than like to be on top of anyone. And I'm just like, because now you're meeting all these great people, there's so much to appreciate in them. And I'm just like, at the same time, I had to learn, I can't push myself down and be like, oh, they're all better than me. I had to come out there and like find my own grounding. So I think African Science Academy did a number to me, bro. But it was
Yeah.
it was a good experience. For the first time, I was like, wow, I can fail too. Like I'm failing. I was struggling. I was really struggling. And when I started to like get my own grounding, I was like, wow, I had so much more empathy for the people because me, I think at the bottom of my mind, I think everyone who was like struggling was just not working hard enough. So I would help people in high school. People come to me like, oh, like I should be really good at biology or math or physics. They'll come like explain to me this, and I'll explain to them. But I think deep down I'll be like, but how come we're all in the same class? You're really not getting this. Like I think deep down there was that pride. And I've always believed that if I work hard enough, I'll do it because I could do it in the moment. But when I got to a place where I was really trying on the weekends, I was really studying. You take the exam, I'm getting a 40%. I'm thinking, what?
Hmm.
and everyone there is like so good in their own countries. Everyone has was like a big prefect. I was head girl in my school. People are also coming in. There were also other head girls. Someone is being named best science student in the whole country. Like there's no, I just until I had to reach that point where I'm like, oh, okay, my value will have to come from somewhere else. And now the competition is internal, where I have to do better than what I was yesterday. And
So
in
why do
like,
you think you struggled?
oh, one, I mean, also the word struggle is different. Like I say, at the school, because one A levels is a 2 year program. That was
Mm-hmm.
it's called an accelerated program, so we do it in 10 months. At the same time that you're doing A levels, they're introducing us to SATs. They're telling us to do
Mm-hmm.
extracurricular activities. We had to do community service every week. We had to do sports every week. We were getting visitors from sometimes the US, from big people in Ghana. And like we would have to prepare for those. If we're having a visitor, they'll be like, read about them. We want to ask intelligent questions. Every Sunday we were having debates. We had to research on those topics. I had responsibilities in the school. I was, I think, head of like assembly. So every morning we used to have an assembly. I was doing a schedule, and this is just 20 girls. We all live in this area. We're running this whole thing. It was a lot. And so my energy was split in so many different places. And also, it was the first time I was living in another country. It was now to the culture shock that I've experienced in the US, that seems very small. At the time, it was big culture shock. It was things like we would raise our hands with our left hands, and the Ghanaians would be like, "That's disrespectful." Like everyone is like pulling your hand out. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do? I was like, wait, what? Like just raising your hand. Like I can't do it with my left hand. Like please. So like there was, I think the school is very rigorous, and like when they do, and it's very, we're doing math, further math, physics. So at a
Mm-hmm.
higher level, the material is also not is material that you will need to sit with for a long time to understand, but you don't have that
Yeah.
time. So you actually, that's everyone was, when I said I was struggling, we were all struggling, and it would be in moments when we're all talking. The people who I think are the smartest, and they're telling me, "We think you're the smartest," and I'm just like, "Oh, me? I'm scared of you guys." Like, everyone, so everyone could see how everyone was so smart and bright. Only you couldn't see, because all these people, like, they had really cool things about them. And then you start to
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, we all bring something to the table. So
Yeah.
that's part of the
So
struggle. It's just a rigorous program, and everyone who's gone through ASA will tell you, I've never been more challenged in my life than when I was at that school.
right. So let's assume I'm watching this podcast and I'm seeing Agnes talking about ASA and I'm interested in ASA. First of all, I
Yeah.
want to know what it stands for, how do I
Okay.
apply, when should I apply, what are the benefits of applying, and what was Agnes's experience from it all. So walk us through that.
Um, yeah. So ASA is African Science Academy, and it's a school in Ghana. It's a A level. It's a pre-university program. So if you want to, it's very helpful if you want to go to university outside of the US, but they also, not outside of, sorry, outside of your own country, because they'll prep you
Mm-hmm.
for living like outside of your own country, but also what stuff that you might face. It's also a very Pan-African school. It's about raising voices of girls in STEM. So if you're someone who's interested in STEM, in science, you're a girl, I think below 18, you apply. The application opens by like November, and they take you, you go by August, and you stay for 1 year. So by then you leave by April. I think you take your final exams. And the experience, it's a very wholesome experience, because they're trying to build confident young women in science. And the reason for that is there's not many women in STEM. And so when you go into the STEM space, you find that you're usually the only woman. And I think for me, that experience has made my science journey
Yeah.
easier, because I was in a place where I found my value first, before I was thrown into an area in which I'm a minority. So even when the intimidation comes, I think I already have a solid foundation. And the fact that they teach you math, physics, and further mathematics, if you want to go to school and do like a STEM degree, you're going to be above many people, because the further mathematics, we're taking the physics, that's mostly the first courses I was taking when I came to college. So when I came to college, I was now doing revision of the stuff I had been doing at ASA. So already it gives you, an advantage in that area, which means you can have more confidence as a woman, going into this, because you can lose confidence when you're struggling in so many areas. You don't see people who look like you, who experience the things you experience. It can be daunting. So I think the biggest thing that ASA did for me was give me that edge, but also I'd already been challenged that much more, that like college was the transition to college was a little bit easier, especially college outside of Zambian education system that I was used to. So, but also it's not just about going to the US. The main, like I said, there's a focus on Pan-Africanism and raising and believing in building tech by Africans for Africans, solving our own problems as Africans by Africans. So I have friends who go to school within, like, go to a school called Ashesi in Ghana. There are people who go to, there's another school in, I think in Rwanda, another one in South Africa. And all these people, we've all gotten this edge because we've studied some of these things that we're going to study. Because if you're going to STEM, you have to do math, physics to some level. Now you've already gotten that background. But also, like I said, we were having a lot of discussions about African identity. They were also teaching us to speak confidently in public spaces. They were pushing us to actually go beyond our potential. Like in that school, wherever we go at the schools we go, everyone is like doing so much because we've been in the mindset of training, of saying, you can do more, you can do better, and like exploring your interests, your potential. Like I think it builds you in so many ways. I think I'm a much more confident speaker now. I think I was always a yapper, a talker before, but I think the thing with ASA is I learned to have like just intellectual discussions with people, because every Sunday we used to do these things called like uh, I forget what we used to call them, but they were mainly, we would pick a topic and we would come discuss it. Like now we're discussing with people from my year. There's people from Zimbabwe, people from Ghana, Cameroon, with someone from Ethiopia. It's You cannot imagine the amount of varied perspectives that brings. So you had to fight for your opinion, fight for what you were thinking because of your own experience. You think we're all Africans, we're all the same. You find out we're so different. So we had to learn, how do you live with people who are so different from you? And that's a really beautiful thing. Like by the end, you've made some really great connections too, and like some of the people you're talking to will be big in their field, and you need that support. So it's a great support system of women who are as passionate as you are, um, who want to do more, who believe in like something greater, and just wanting to make positive change and to do something. So if you think you're that person, I highly encourage. You will, like I said, it's a rigorous program, but if you're a person with interest, and when you leave, there's such a positive. You leave with so much. I found the opportunity to study here in the US because I went there, and even people who stay like within or on the continent, they just they have this mindset. They're applying for grants to do things that you sometimes it seems small, but to be told that you can do this, like that there's resources, because they would bring people who would like previously watched just on TV. They'll come speak to you. It does something for your mind. They would take us on these like big dinners with people who were working at big oil companies in Ghana, and we were having conversing with them, talking to them. Now for me, I'd never known an engineer like how when I grew up. Now you're talking to these people, they become real, and there's something great that happens there. It becomes tangible. You're like, oh, I want to be like these people. I think it's different when you're just hearing like there's a better path. Like you've never seen anyone live that path. You've never seen beyond the walls of like your own community, your country. For me, I came from a very financially underprivileged background, so I didn't have access to many resources. You go to that place where they give you everything, and it's just like a lot can happen. So there's a lot. I highly encourage, if you're someone who's interested in science, it will give you a stepping stone. And I think those
Yeah.
things are needed for women. So I don't know. Ken,
STEMINIST.
yo, much about WhatsApp. You did your research.
Did the research.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Wow, STEMINIST is a word. Honestly, I want to say me and my friend Kaswande came up with this word, STEMINIST.
Mhm.
we came up with it before we saw it anywhere else, and what that basically means. But now I have to say it's out there. I've seen shit, so I'm like, wait, did we discover it? Anyway, the STEMINIST is someone who believes in empowering more people in the field of STEM. So when I call myself a feminist with my friend is because we started a organization called Youth for STEM, and we want. I mean, we started it right before COVID. Hit by COVID, we both left the country, so there's been a lot of slow progress. But we want to teach kids. We're opening up a space to help nurture the interest in science in younger kids because we believe to take up some of these careers, like especially studying in the US. When I came, I was a good math student because of my background, but I'd never coded, and I'm doing intelligent systems engineering, so it has to do with AI and robotics. A lot of coding, which I'd never been exposed to before. And some of the people I go to school with, you ask them, they've been coding since they were 10. And the confidence that that gives you, the knowledge, it's just, that as for coming in, I mean, we've had support and like, you can for sure do it. But I'm just like, those people that they had that interest from such a young age, they've built projects. By the time they're coming, some of the projects that they're doing, they've done before at their own free time. So it's just not as challenging and you probably have an easier time. So I'm like, even STEM retention, science education, if I think to solve our own problems as Africans, we are going to have to be more innovative. And like innovation, I don't think they teach in our schools. They teach us to regurgitate information. I can't believe we were learning about things like independence. Yeah, we were even laughing. I was like, Africans, you couldn't go anywhere until they give you a pass. It was like a stamp. When did they do this? 1964. October 24th October. It meant nothing because we never did the reflection of like what does this mean. So I don't think, but the innovation comes in. You learn something, you interact with it as a person. You think about the material, you think about future wise. So we're building this space in terms of STEM. We want kids to be like exposed to some of these things at a young age. We want to do STEM challenges. You bring out a challenge, you just nurture that creativity, which we think is there's a lot of it back home. So that's why I call myself a STEMinist. I want more Africans to be in this field to think more about solving problems. You see a problem, you start thinking of like, what can I actually do? Because we see things and we're just like, that's just how life is. Like we just accept, we adapt. I mean, we're so creative. We find ways of surviving with the conditions. But what about asking the question like, how can we change this? Like I want more people to be taking that step. Like if we see something in our communities we don't like what can we do about this? Only after I came back from ASA was I like I went back home. I was seeing so much trash. I'm like, why haven't I ever thought about creating an organization where we just arrange kids in the community, we pick up trash and like as community service, like why haven't I've seen this trash, I think it's a problem. It's just like, oh, like we just don't have a good like system. Like I think we need to start thinking in terms of like, and it places a lot of, I think, responsibility on citizens, but
Hmm.
which is another political issue. I'm not saying we can solve our problems, especially as Zambians, but I'm saying that kind of thinking can help us become more innovative and like in changing our current situation and creating a better, so better Zambia for us.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the issue of the mindset, how you're thinking, how you perceive situations, and I feel like for most of our people, it's how we look at problems, and half the time a solution can be solved just by changing the way we think. But just before I forget, you said you're building this platform or this
It's a
opportunity.
space
Where is it?
in.
A physical place?
Yeah, it's a physical place. So we're partnering with a school in Chipata compound. It's a community
Okay.
school, and
Hmm.
they don't really have a library. They have a room. So we've been renovating that space, buying. We did like a book drive. We're putting some books in there, so that they can have a library. So it's mutual. They will get a library, but the library will be focused on STEM, for which is where we come in. We'll conduct the sessions in there with kids,
Hmm.
teach them with getting STEM books. We're trying to get grants right now to buy STEM kits for the space, computers. So we're bringing, it's a vision we have that we hopefully will grow big enough.
Yeah.
Right now we're starting with Chipata compound.
If there's any way we can help, me and Jackson will be glad to step in.
Thank you.
Quickly pivoting. I know you previously talked about how a headmaster of was it ASA encouraged you and spoke to you. One of the biggest things I've learned in the US that has helped me is an issue of having mentors or
Mm.
people that you look up to who can like nurture you in, your field of study. How important do you think this is, and do you have any like in particular, and how do you navigate that, in terms of
Yeah,
picking their brains on stuff that you want to learn more about, or just tapping into their experience?
heavy loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's. I think not many people talk about mentorship. Like I think only later was I starting to hear these words mentorship, like going to African Science Academy in Ghana. But I'm like, there's so much that could be accomplished if we just don't look to the people, just the people in our lives as the knowledge base. I'm like, what was
Mm-hmm.
stopping me when I was in Zambia to look on LinkedIn to see Zambian engineers and just be like, could I just actually talk to you for like 15 minutes or like 30
Yeah.
minutes to hear about your experience? Because I'd never been taught that that's the thing to do. So when we're talking about mentorship, for me, it's been like there are times when I got exposed to it through like some of the programs that I was in where they're like, oh, they give you a mentor and you start speaking to them. And I'm like, oh, this is so useful. Like,
Yeah.
this is someone who, as a first generation college student, I can't ask my parents about classes like some of the STEM classes I'm taking, or when I was wanting to figure out like, yes, I want to go into engineering, but where? Like
Mm-hmm.
engineering is broad, there's so much you could do. And then I'm like, okay, I'm getting an interest in AI, kind of robotics, but like where do I go? And that's where mentors come in. I had
Yeah.
mentors who I was just asking the dumb questions of like, what does the day in your life look like? Like, what do you actually do? And then
Mm-hmm.
they're just explaining those things, and you're envisioning. But also there've been mentors who at times when I was saying in ASC I was very frustrated. And I think sometimes when you older people can see things in you that sometimes you don't see, or not older people, more just many more experienced people,
Yeah.
they can see that this person has something, and for you in the moment you might just be like, okay, this is a lot, and like you start to lose that belief. And I think those people are important to help you see that value in yourself, help you realize that you've been on this journey for a while, and like you've done so much. And so for me, what she did in the moment was like, she's like, I've known you since you came into you were a bright student, and like, and I'm just like listening to that from someone who I look up to. It's big, like it does something in you, and I'm like, yes, like I want to do this to prove to myself, but also because I look up to you and you've seen something in me. It means even at the moment when I don't trust in myself, I trust in your judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think mentorship for me has been many of the things that I've done. I've relied on mentors to apply. When I was applying to schools in the US, my mentors were reading my essays. They were helping
Mm-hmm.
me, giving me feedback. Even when I just come to the US, I got a mentor. I got to help me with just being in college. She's someone who had done college, was working at a company, had done college in the US, and just like that we were meeting like monthly, and she was just explaining things to me about that education system. You feel like you have someone holding your hand through it.
Yeah.
And and sometimes I'll say like, oh, if you're the first one in your family stuff, it feels like a lonely journey. But really, I've had people, and it's about recognizing that yes, you might not get this from a conventional way that everyone gets it, but it's out there, and how you're gonna get it. And honestly, this is even high level for Zambians. When I look back, I think my first mentors were my teachers, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my teacher in high school, who was recognizing this interest in me. A funny story is this: in primary school, I always used to get report cards that said like she argues with teachers a lot. Right. I used to be a problem at home. At home, when that report card was gone, my dad would be like, why do you think you know too much? You should shut up in class and listen to the teacher. I was the type of student who, if I think the teacher like wrote something wrong, I'll be, you did something wrong there. And I'm just like, And we start having this back and forth. And sometimes some teachers didn't like it. Other teachers thought it was a form of disrespect. Or
Mm-hmm.
when they're teaching, I'm like, I don't really agree with that. I don't know why. I would just say like, I don't agree with that. And then like everyone is just looking like, oh, what? And then so I was getting a lot of reports like she's a bright student but argues with teachers a lot, like disruptive in class.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went to boarding school at Refunsa Girls, my physics teacher and my chemistry teacher, Mr. Makukula, he was people we used to think Mr. Makukula is crazy. He loved the experiments. He like so when I argue with him, I'm like, Mr. Makukula, I don't believe in this. He's like, "Anyway, come to my lab." And like he knew how to handle my curiosity, I think for the first time. And he's one of
Yeah.
those people who who look at something. Sometimes it's a question. I'm like, I don't believe in it. He's like, okay, if I explain this in class, it's going to take our class time. You and me and anyone who's interested, let's come solve this question so that I can show you. And after I'll go, I'm like, yeah, I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove you. And then he explains. I'm like, oh, okay, you were actually right. I was like, okay. You know, I think he's the first one who that was a mentor for me. That's the first mentor to have that person. So it means when I had questions, I would run to
Mm-hmm.
him. I'm like, what do you think about this? Like I was always wanting to pick his brain. Now I got that person who was very receptive. That's one of my first mentors. And like he was the leader of the Jets team. He was the staff in charge of Jets. And he was like, come to Jets. He was like, you might come to Jets. He's like, over there, we have a lot of questions for you to be answering. you know. I joined Jets and we were doing projects with him. And I think that I have to say, with Jets itself opened a lot of opportunities, showed me a lot of my, interest in STEM. And I'm like, yeah, so was a mentor for me. When it came to like, I was needing recommendations. He's a person who was there, recommending. So I think I did have mentors even back in Zambia. Even I didn't really see it at the moment as that's a mentor,
Yeah.
but that was someone who played a big role. And like sometimes in class, even if I was too quiet, like maybe two times, he would ask me, he's like, what's wrong? Like, it's people would check, and I'm like, now I know you believe in me. I am
Mm-hmm.
more likely to like show up, or if I feel like discouraged about something, they're going to pick me up, and
Yeah.
like there's so much power in that. Like you can't do everything by yourself. We want to think
Yeah.
like, oh, you made it. Everyone I think who's made it somewhere, I don't think I've done anything by myself. It's been like either knowing people, they know I'm interested in this, they suggest, like even going to African Science Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica, I don't know if you know Jessica Jackson.
Clarkson.
She was in charge of USAP Zambia, and she was like, I was still there. I was talking about feminist things, whatever. She was like, this school would be really good for you. Do you look into it? So I started looking into it, and I got really interested. I'm like, oh, like a school of just girls. She's like, you're the type who would like, thrive at such, an environment. And I didn't know about the school, so it's also like mentors are people who will show you the resources, will point you sometimes. Like you can only work with what you know. So if you don't know out there that there's a school called African Science Academy, you might be as qualified more qualified than the people applying. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
about it, you're not going to apply. So I'm like, that's why it's so important for me when I'm going into a field. I want to get mentors. They know about the space, they know the ins and outs. They will give you the tips and tricks that they've learned for like over the years that it took them for so long. They just hand it to you. They'll, helped me through my confusion. I'm like, oh, I'm interested in this, that. They're like, try it out. Just try out of interest. So like even just the same story with my high school teacher. I think I knew of Jets. I just
Mm-hmm.
like never inquired much until
Yeah.
until him. He was my leading point into Jets, and that opened a lot of opportunities. I think for me.
Mm.
So I
So
think wrapping up your question, I think it is very helpful. And like don't think mentors is like a big thing. It's in where you are today and asking the question, where do you want to be? And identifying who are the people who are already where you want to be. Those are the people you want to talk to. Those are the people who you want to tell your story to. Because
yeah.
ultimately they're in the rooms where things are happening. They know they might. I'm not saying that it's a cheat code to getting everything there. Sometimes when my mentors will recommend something, you apply, you don't really get it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work out. Like, it's just like it's someone who's, recommending things. But also, I think they've also picked me up in many times when I've like felt discouraged or, encouraged me. And that's really important. Like, many of the things I've done, I've had people who supported me through. And like that, it make it feel so good to be doing something. And like I was doing jets, and like sometimes I was preparing for quizzes. My teacher and I would stay like past 22. He's asking me questions, grilling me. It's like,
Mhm.
because jets is also about remembering sometimes those like general knowledge quizzes. Just
Yeah.
I'm like someone who's investing this much time in me. It's just like it makes you want to do better. And even if let's say you want to let I wanted to go into engineering. I had an engineer take time with me every month. They show up to the meeting. I'm like, this is a person I would have never interacted with. Now they're giving their time to me.
Mhm.
So it makes me want to, like, I'm like, for next meeting, if she tells me she recommends this, that, I want to be able to say, oh, I did this that you suggested. I tried this. Like, it's a way it pushes you to do, I think, do better. So for me, before when I'm going into like a new area, a new stage of life, I'm always thinking like, who's
Mhm.
done this before? Who's done? It doesn't have to be like older people. Sometimes it's just friends. I'm like, hey, I know you did this. Like, how was that? Sometimes it's mentors are also just my friends. You begin
Yeah.
to build this network, and people have more experience in this, that, and you get what you need to move forward.
Yeah, and there's always this misconception that a mentor has to be like this other person, like you said, or, and it's like different aspects of your life would need different mentors,
Yeah,
your social life, your academic life, and stuff like that. You brought up a strong point, though, something that I always think about. You said something about just having an aspect of you trying to memorize things. I always try to look at our education system, and me and Jackson are always going back and forth
yeah.
about it. How it needs so much reform in terms of the way we approach and answer certain things. Just a general layout of it, right? What's
Yeah.
your take on that? Because yeah, it's due for
Well,
a change.
it's due, and I keep saying, telling people, if I have to join Zambian politics, I think I need to be education minister.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't need to be me. If someone else does this before me, I'll be so happy. But like, I'm just like, there's no way that you are learning things, learning concepts to write in an exam, most
Hmm.
of which we don't even take to our real life. Like, if
Right.
you're learning about science, you interact with science in your real life.
Right.
And like, I'm like, but the way I'm like, some of these things I learned this thing, but why doesn't it feel like you even learned the thing? That's why, like, pupils now, you learn something and they're asking you explain this.
Mhm.
You think of in the textbook definition, it said, but what does that really mean to you? Like, have you? It should be knowledge that you carry, that
Right.
acts you as a person, that like refines how you show up in the world. And I
Hmm.
think I didn't get that from my Zambian education system. I think only in a few things, like because I was extra interested in things like, physics, whatever,
Hmm.
I was getting a deeper understanding. But even then, I think it wasn't, it could have been better. And I think part of it is things like science classes, they were very lecture heavy. Like,
Yeah.
how about there was no space for like, they introduce a concept, then you play with it. You understand? Like, there was no chance you come and you explain to me force. Like, we used to do experiments, they would do, especially in high school, but it was those experiments that they knew in the grade 12 exam. They'll ask you about that experiment. So even when you're learning, I think we learn for exams instead of
Hmm.
learning for like living today.
Yeah.
Even like we were learning like, it's just, I think, come to English classes when you're doing things like composition or you're just reading text. We were learning about even history. You learn about people like Shaka Zulu. There's no time to sit like, this, you are a descendant of these people. She said nobody ever asked the question, write an essay about what this makes you feel. We never
Hmm.
had to ask that question, because if you have to ask the question, what does this make you feel? You have to put yourself in that environment with the
Right.
things, to start playing with it, to be like, okay, we were colonized. How do I feel about that? What does that mean for me today? Because we just knew we were colonized. If you ask me who colonized Zambia, British. Like, I'm
Hmm.
happy the British colonized. What does that mean that the British colonized Zambia? Like, if somebody had asked me, like the essays we're writing, they'll say, write whatever Declaration of Human Rights, and I'm just regurgitating what I read in the textbook. But like,
Hmm.
maybe the question could have been, if I had to make human rights, a declaration of human rights, how would I make it? Because now
Yeah.
it puts me at the center of my learning. I can interact with
Mm.
it. You know,
Right.
if we're learning math and I'm doing a math question and I solve it, it's like,
Mhm.
what does that even mean to the real world? Some of those questions, like for a long time, I always says like people say like math, you can't really apply it, and I'm just like, no, you actually math actually is applied
It
everywhere.
rules the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a math is an understanding of how the world works. You've quantified it. People will be like, oh,
Right.
we're learning about all these simultaneous equations. What would that ever help me? Every day we deal with simultaneous equations in terms of like if we were coming from a standpoint of okay, you learn what a simultaneous equation is, then you tell me if today water is coming out of a cup of a tap
Hmm.
at this rate, okay, and the width of the thing of the whatever tap is this, how much water am I going to lose per minute? Now I have to think, now I can relate, that equation can help me solve that question
Yeah.
because we have two variables, x and y is changing. So
Hmm.
now your variables, you're talking about the width, and you're talking about, but it's just like the application to the real world is missing. And I think and I think part of the problem with that, let me take you back to my Pan African education, is
Hmm.
when we were colonized, right? People were making a system ultimately to keep Africans down. So you see that when we came to the US, some of us, the education system was so different. Everything was always about you. If you were writing essays, it was about you. Then I asked, like, how come our education systems are so different? It's not because Africans are dumb and these people are so smart that they created a education system that works. It's because actually when they came to settle in African countries, they were building these education systems. They figured if Africans are going to go through an education system like we do, they'll
Hmm.
also succeed like us. But they were racist and they were like, oh, we have to keep them lower. They shouldn't have access to this. So your education system becomes more of, we people Africans were learning at that time to be slaves or to be workers of white people who were the innovators of this new system they were creating in colonial Zambia. So
Hmm.
whatever, even if you look at the history of when we were even allowed to start to go to school, you have to understand that our education system is deeply rooted in a racist structure that believes that we're inherently like less inferior than white counterparts at that time. So people like Kaunda fighting for independence, we just adopt what the British had been doing without asking the questions. How did we start going to school like this? Why is the headmaster in a Zambian school feared? A headmaster here in the US, they're actually trying to get the respect of students. It's because headmasters in the past were only white people. And white people wanted black people to fear them. So if you can fear someone, if you can mentally convince someone they're inferior, you've defeated them. The whole system was
Hmm.
meant to mentally keep us down. And when they left, we didn't think, let's rebuild a system that works for us. The textbooks we use are still the same.
Hmm.
You're still using textbooks of people who wanted to keep you down. Like,
Yeah.
we're still teaching history from their perspective. That's why we still believe as Africans that we're very inferior. Like any technological thing in Zambia, if you talk to them, they'll say Mbawazung.
Hmm.
Like if
Yeah.
it's most or if I'm failing right now with the computer, I'm like, Mbachizungu, vinabuya moche drive. We're saying, well, literally, this is inherently not ours.
Hmm.
So there's everything wrong with the education system when it comes from without asking. We inherited a system. We didn't ask the questions of why is this system even in place? Why does it work like this? And I'm saying when we start asking the question, why do we have to cut our hair? Did anyone ever ask? Government schools, Mama is
Hmm.
because white people thought black hair was just not professional. And
Yeah.
today we force people to cut their hair, and now you ask headmasters, no one can really give you a reason why people have to cut their hair to go to school. They'll be like, oh, it's for cleanliness, so it doesn't disturb you. How come you don't care about any? Does that mean we should stop showering because it might disturb you as well? It takes some time to shower before you go to school. Like, should we not be human and interact with our bodies because we have to go to No, we're explaining a system that we don't even understand why it works the way it works. The reason why people were cutting their hair, talk about the history of wearing wigs in the workplace. It's because black hair was never, all of us here, we have history with having a white name. Like not a white name, but a more English name, sorry to be more specific. It's because black people couldn't get a job with an African name in colonial Zambia. So we think colonialism was so far. We're still living in neo-colonialism. We're still living in the systems that were set up at that time. Just because now you have a black president doesn't mean like things have changed. It just means there's a black president sitting on an oppressive system. Even today, it's more like, what's the word, like more futuristic, for lack of a better term, to have your kids speak English than Nyanja.
Right.
More so you want to give your kids more English speaking names than your own local names. You know, people are proud of that more than we're proud. Where is it coming from? It's coming from a system that told us inherently what is African is inferior and what is
Mm-hmm.
other is better. So it's embedded in every system. I'm just going from example to from the names we give, why we think English is better. When I went to boarding school, they used to laugh at this girl who never used to speak good English. She was bundu. The word, even why we say nyanja is bundu. There are people who would literally be say, that girl is bundu because they just speak nyanja. Or how we look down on people who come from, let's say, a village.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't know, they're just backwards. We think it. All of that is because we're getting into this system of like we're believing that inherently we're inferior, and no one has ever said this, but it's embedded in in everything in society that we interact with. So we have to really radically change, really be making people ask the questions: why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing this? Why should we fear the headmaster? Why can't you? So why is there punishment where people were beating Africans? They were beating Africans, and now you've come to become a teacher. You're understanding, beat these kids into submission. Other
Mm-hmm.
systems, they convince you into submit. They convince you by having a conversation with you. Then you're like, okay, that makes sense. Then you do it. Here, you're gonna have to do it, or there's punish. I'm not saying punishment in every form is wrong, but I'm just saying, especially in the education system, it's a fearsome place. Like we spend so much time in school. Why is school? No, why is every year we're never asking the question, how can we make school better?
Yeah.
Every class in the US you take, there'll be surveys at the end. What do you like about this? Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, every day, what do you like about class? What do you know? Like, there's a system of accountability in which professors, there are people checking them, the department reads those OCQs, the surveys, the feedback that you give about whether you like the class or not. That's why no professor here can fail you. I hear of like stories back home of people who went to school. You're literally scared of the professor. Why?
Yeah.
Because they're not. The professor is looking like a highest form of power. Who is he accountable to? Who's coming in to check that his class is actually running well? Who's coming to check how many people fail? Are we asking the questions? How can more people pass the class?
Mm-hmm.
Are you asking the students what can we do better? We never ask those questions. We have to be thinking everything we interact with. You go to the police, it's a bad experience. Someone stole my bag one time in Osaka. I went to the police, I reported it. You know what they told me?
What?
At ati mwana wa these days. So it was bag yako papa ni manje. Wako goodies and no goodies a bag. Ati papa manje bo news evo. Why goodies and no goodies a bag yako. So why don't I get bag fancy? Why don't I get? I was like, where did I even come here, please? The
Yeah.
woman she was going in blaming me the victim. I'm like, isn't this the place we come? Even those systems, who's checking? Who's
Mm-hmm.
listening to the complaints that we have? Customer service is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who's
Uh,
asking the?
no, thank you so much for the
It's crazy because we've not been taught to think like that. We've not been taught to be asking like, why this? Why should
yeah.
you accept shitty treatment? You're paying for this. Why? You're paying for your kids to go to school. We should be
Hmm.
asking, how can we make it better? We spend the most time in school. How can we make the class experience better? How can we make school? If we start to ask those questions, it will. I think that's when the real change will happen. You know, when you're walking home, you say, "Why? Why is this? How can I? How can I do better? How can we do better?" I think we settle for less. It's like, oh, that's just, and I think part of it is that we just don't have a lot of hope. And I think it will be the work of rebuilding hope. People will have to see like things actually happen when they raise their voice for change.
So in the interest of like raising that hope that you're talking about, because
Yeah,
not everybody's as exposed as you and I and some other lucky few. So in the hopes of raising that hope that you're talking about, that we can create this change. Like, what are some of the practical steps right now? Yes, the first step is speaking about them, and
mm,
we have started raising these voices. We have started asking the questions, but then how do we then move from here to see the change that we are preaching?
true. That's a very good question. I think I'm still trying to answer that question. Especially, it's hard to make change when you're very far, especially where we have the luxury of discussing these things. We're not really at home. And realistically, when you're at school, even if someone had questioned, like, why should I cut my hair? People were very resistant to even cutting their hair. Right? I think change is going to have to come from up, coming down. One, we have to, and practical steps that we can take. Let us start, and I think we need to be talking to the people in power. These are people who are making the laws. We need a platform. I think there's like, where can we meet the Minister of Education to give our grievances? That's number one. And also, up coming down is very hard because like red tape. Can we really meet the Minister of Education?
Yeah.
Really? It's also hard if they haven't made systems of saying of critique. I think the practical steps that are going to happen, I'm going to make my own school that is going to be very different. And it's in the marketing of that school that I think we're going to have to, and like as I'm saying, if we're having people who are aspiring, when we do have these like these moments, these aha moments of like, why are we doing these things? I think we're the people who should try to be in these positions. That's number one. Try to champion, but don't stop speaking about it, because the more we can inspire minds, that mind one day will be on a committee talking about education. And I think for us, because we're so far back in the process of one, we have to educate a whole population of what is going on before we can take the next step. And I know it's easy to be like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? But the real change will happen when you change people's minds. Because when you change people's minds, it won't even be you, maybe, or me who change these things. It will be already people who are already positioned in those positions to take up the leadership, who actually, I believe, who have to take it up and be like, hey, let's change the law. Like, why does this law act like this? Or the day that we're sitting in Zambia and people are debating a law and we all think about this, we're all more equipped to make a better decision. So one, I think we need to keep talking about this, either speaking in schools, speaking as and not just in schools, to kids, to school boards, to teachers. Like we have to run, if we have to do this, if somebody wants to do this, run workshops like with STEM teachers. We could start with there, like how do you, let's look at how do you teach them, just how can you ask questions better, how can you make the classroom experience more lively, how can you do workshops to teach. I think we can focus on the education system, because many of these things, if we are aware of them and we're learning of them, we can breed, we can think differently and it will change many aspects. So I'm like, speak to boards, teachers, kids, run workshops. Let's ask questions. And I think that's where we can start, is in going like, on the ground and like, but for now, the best we can do is have these conversations. Hopefully someone is listening and will be like, yeah, I didn't really want to cut my hair, but I had to cut my hair. Wakupeleka chipala ku school. It's demeaning. You have to kill the yourself to show up the best. It's almost demeaning. Pa penango, if your hair is like that, they'll cut it like a cross.
Yeah.
Oh, don't braid your hair. They'll be like, don't braid your hair for women. You can't be looking like the teachers. What? What?
Yeah, I remember such.
What?
We need to have a minister of education or something with ask them such questions. What are some of the things they can start changing
Yeah.
now?
We need to start looking for these platforms, making people accountable in these positions. You were a minister of it, and I'm like, every year the interesting thing is we're voting for a president, and I ask people, did you read the manifesto?
None
Like
of
you're like, oh,
them.
PF, I'm supporting HN. I'm like, I would just ask a person that question. It will crack their whole thinking. It never came to their mind that I'm like, if you a person is running for presidency, they have a manifesto somewhere. Did you read it? How are you making your decision? How can we keep them accountable if going in we don't even know? There should be a presidential debate.
They should.
Yeah.
They really should.
The presidential debate that happens or the minister, it's a joke.
Does it even happen in Zambia?
It
Well,
needs
they'll interview Mr. Muriokela and they'll call that a presidential debate
you see the people they're going to interview for fun, for jokes.
for
Interview
numbers.
the
Yeah.
people, ask them who's thinking about our relationship to the Chinese. Like
Yeah.
ask the presidents what plan do you have for us and that relationship. Where are we actually going? The real ask the people we don't know this borrow. We're just seeing more Chinese in our country. This is no racist, no good. I'm just saying we need to know like where are we actually going. What bonds
Yeah.
are you signing? What agreements are you signing? Media companies need to be airing these things out. We need to be asking these questions.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Nelson and I are trying to create this space is to have such conversation because
Yeah.
we really need to see change, right? But change starts from us speaking and being aware of these things. There are many people back home that are shocked every time you mention something that is normal here. And
Yeah.
when you mention that, they're like, really? That's how life is. That's like, So having this conversation, I think will open our minds up.
People are doing things differently elsewhere. We don't have to be doing these things the way we don't have to accept this. This is not the standard. Let's
Yeah.
always think do things better. It's like even the issue. Something I'm really sad about is just when I juxtapose my education experience in the U.S. and Zambia. Oh, I hear my friends in Zambia going to universities, and it's like we have things like curves. They'll curve your grade based on the class, office hours. Like there are professors who actually, when I was very engaged in a class, and then I stopped being engaged, they'll email me like, "What's going on?" Because
Yeah.
they have a system of what they know at the end of the class. There will be a time when we'll be giving reviews. Those reviews play a role into how many people, like into the career progression of a professor. So there's a system that makes people accountable. We need to start thinking, let's assume the worst person took position of this. How can we make a system that makes sure that they still act right? We can't trust people. This is the country we're building. It's not a church. It's not about trust. Like how can we build system that even if the worst person was to take position, they will have to act right? If we put ministers, review them. You said you were going to do of those things you did, which did you do? And some
Mm.
minister, there's rotation. You can't stay for so long if you are
Yeah.
not actually fulfilling the things that you're saying you want to do. Let's see someone else do it. If there's accountability, we need to be asking what are the accountability structures in society. If I go there to, I said my police station experience, I had a horrible experience. They weren't even taking me seriously to write down my problem. Where can I go complain about that? Because when that happens, that's it. It's just stopped. It's just a story. Where do I go right then? Who do I speak to? How do we make sure that the police officer doesn't feel like they have too much power? We need to be asking those questions in every system we build. If the worst person was to take this position, what system can we put in place so that they're actually running it right? It's just so sad. I'm like, professors are just doing what they want.
Yeah.
A professor is serving us. Either our professor serve us. There's no professor who can fail me because he felt like failing me. And even if he did, of course, like I said, it doesn't mean that all the professors here are perfect because we have that system.
Yeah.
People do their grades, and actually, they are heard. I've heard there's an appealing system. There's no guarantee you ever hear back, and things might just get worse for you. How are you
Yeah.
protecting students?
Yeah. Well, we need to keep driving this conversation, like we have said, and
Yeah.
I'm glad we've highlighted it, highlighted its shortcomings, and now the conversation is out there. We all need to start, talking to these people. If you have any way of, getting in contact with the minister, or if you can get his Facebook, just drop a message there,
Yeah.
wherever, however you can. It's another thing where in Zambia, the email culture is so bad. Like over here, if you want to get in contact with someone, just look them up.
Yeah.
There's somewhere you find their email. You can
Yeah. You can.
message them. They'll get back to you. But moving forward, still with the school system, I'm wondering, at what point did it occur to you that you wanted to study in the US? Is it something you wanted to do from the onset? Is it something that just happened? And why do you think that was important, or why do you think that's important?
Yeah. I never always wanted. I never wanted to study in the US. I didn't even know people could study in the US.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest dream, I used to think making it. We would drive by University of Zambia or Binibasa. One day I'll be there. I mean, I'm the first person in my family to even graduate college. So my dreams went as far as if I could even make it to college.
Mm-hmm.
That's as far as I wanted to go. But like I was saying, also coming in with the importance of mentors, who are people who are seeing a bit higher than you are seeing. You only see as much as you experience. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, for me, the biggest thing that happened for me was one, going to boarding school. It meant I left the hood where I was living.
Why
And
do you think that's important?
because many of my friends in that area, they're either pregnant right now. Um, there's just, I didn't know of anyone who left and built a better life. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's important because everyone you see, everyone who's around you, kind of shapes you. That's where we get the inspiration of what you can be.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So if your whole life you've seen like your mom married this dude, very abusive, she stayed. You think people stay in abusive situations? That's just the normal for you. Until you see other people who are leaving, that becomes an option. Of like, oh, I saw
Mm-hmm.
that person who left. You get more confidence, like I can leave too. Or I never saw anyone really, like a few people I saw like went to college, but even then they just came back at home and like sat. So I didn't really see, and when I went left like home, like the area I was living in, and I went to boarding school. Now I was going to school with people who my friends would be like, "Oh, my sister's studying in China. My brother is studying in the US." I'm like, wait, you guys, everyone in your family just made it. I'm like, everyone in your family just. I was like, I think it was dawning on me. I was like, wow, I can't say that. Like
Yeah.
there are people who, like something will be hard. They're like, okay, I'm going to call my sister. Like they using their phone. I'm going to call my sister to ask for this advice. I knew my education was on me. I did my own homeworks. Sometimes I signed my own homeworks. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I needed an answer, sometimes maybe I knew like, Patrick is in grade 9, 2 houses down. I'll have to go. Like, can you help me with this? I wasn't getting that at home. So it was when I was leaving and I was like, there's another life actually out there that like people are living and people so close to me. It means I could live. Over the years I was like, why am I not, if I was wishing to just like one day maybe go to college, and now I'm talking to people who are like, oh, when I like graduate, I'm thinking, I'm going to move, I'll go live in this place, or I'm going to build this, and I'm just like, that I was never thinking like that. And I'm just like, now I'm like, okay, what I was thinking, I'm like, this sounds really good. If I could have
Yeah.
it, I should take a shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it changes. It's really, the mental shift is more important than anything. When you start to ask, like, actually, why am I'm like, there's families where everyone is like successful. Your brother is a lawyer, this one is a what, works at FNB, does this, your parents take you guys on vacations. I'm like, oh, maybe if I have kids, I want to also go to vacations. It sounds
Mm.
nice. Because
Yeah.
before that, what was a vacation? I never dreamt of, like, I never saw myself getting on a plane. Getting now, I'm seeing these people. I'm just like, what's that experience like? And they're telling you stories that are blowing your mind that I've only watched on TV. For the first time, they become real. I'm like, there's people in Zambia living a different life, and that life looks better to you. So I'm just like, why can I? And then it became hard for me when I went home during the holidays to feel comfortable because
Same.
the nights are different, yo. You go home
Isn't
and
that sad though?
huh?
Isn't that sad? Like, don't you feel
so
some
sad.
type
It
of
was so sad
yeah.
because I lost friends. Now there was no grounding.
Yeah. The only
No,
friends
you
I had were the ones I made in boarding.
yeah, even
Yeah.
the boarding school friends are the ones we stay with because now you go home, you're talking to people. They're talking about little then they're Chinese. Like it's just I'm like, yo, I don't know. My mentor is like there was no actual conversation that was stimulating me anymore.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
we're sitting, no one is talking about anything. We're just like, people are just sitting and then I'll hear like they'll come, "Unambela uja, tananga na mimba." Like they would be like, yeah, 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 jen, jen. Uja wanakuja wanaenda pa banka ya paja. Ija dewe zwamba na wajandani. Awa wanaenda kukambisana hawa. So I'm just like, oh. And then like if you ask, and then I would even try to start some conversations with people. It was just not going any. You become an alien. So whenever I
Yeah.
went home, I think I still tried to just hang out with my boarding school because now for me that was the real change when my mentor had changed. When I was like, I want to see better, and then I did a thing where because I know some boarding school friends, I went to visit their houses. I was like, yo, you've lived. I mean, what does it do to someone? You've had your own room your whole life. I'm just like, wow, this in your being. Like I want this. I'm like, I want this for myself. And it
Yeah.
changes. It changes all the people you talk to. Their goals are like the dudes. They're saying they like Aguisa Bagantemba. I'm just like, okay, Aguisa Bagantemba, you and me. Okay, my life. I'm just like, my life looks like I'll be a wife of a Kantemba. So I'm like, nah. And like there, I started to reject that, and I think from there, that was the real change. I was like, this is not going to be my life because I'd seen better and I know people who are in better situations. And now it makes me mad that I'm not. And I'm like, this person is not better than me. Some of those people, they come to me to ask for help. I'm like, so
Mhm.
why do they deserve to be in that situation more than I do? And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
that's where I need to get. So when I say that's so important, and I think if I was able to create a program,
Mhm.
it would be for kids. It would be I would get kids in really bad communities in terms of economically like underprivileged. Let them put them on a plane, take them to Livingston, put them in a 5-star hotel. That would do
Mhm.
more change than any amount of speeches.
Yeah.
You have you have to make it feel tangible. So for me, when it felt tangible, a lot of things changed for me. My thinking changed, and now when I say like did I want to come to the US? Coming back to your question, I never wanted, like maybe when I was talking to people in boarding school, things like China, I was hearing people going to Morocco. They were
Mhm.
coming. I was like, okay, I can still go to Unza. I've studied this. I'm like, after that, I'm not coming back here. I'll find my own apartment. Like my goals were changing. I was like, I need to live. And
Mhm.
then in high school, I'd done so much. I mean, I was running so many clubs. I was head girl of the school. Um, Jessica was running USAP, which is what does USAP stand for again?
United Students Achievers Program.
Yeah, and that program is for under economically underprivileged kids who are high achieving. They help you apply to schools. So she was wanting to have more girls in the program. They had pointed at Bufunsa Girls Technical Secondary School, which I was at. She came to the school, administered a test. I took the test. She ended up picking me and Kasonde. We joined my friend Kasonde USAP. And there they took us on a camp to Zimbabwe. They brought people who had studied in the US. They were telling us their stories. And my mind was blown. They were talking of an education system that I felt like, well, I would want to learn in such, I was already a curious student. And they were talking about like having professors who were pushing them, doing research. So they're like, oh, I did research in this when I was in college. I was like, what does that even mean to be doing research, to be publishing papers that people read online, to be part of that process? I was like,
Yeah.
this sounds really interesting. And even the air that they had was different. I'm telling you, like, even the air that they had was different. But we went in there, we shut up. We wanted to listen. I was mesmerized by these people. And you see,
So
the change happened because I left. I left. I was in that room. I was in rooms with them. We were doing one-on-one sessions. I was asking them, "How did you go?" I'm like, "Who are these people?" And they're telling me, and Yusuf is telling me, These are people from underprivileged backgrounds like you. These are people who, and then I'm seeing them, they're showing up with big cars. Like to a kid, I'm like, I want to drive such a car. I want to enter a room and they're quiet like this, like we were quiet. You know, I'm telling you, my motivations were even just as superficial as that. I'm just like, I want to carry that air. I want to look, skin is looking, is glowing. I'm like, I want my skin to look like that. Like that's possible for someone who's coming from my background. At that point, when you've told me I have a chance, I was one to, and I changed. Now I was like, I want to apply to these schools, and they're
Yeah.
telling me the schools that give 100% financial aid. Tell your story. I was writing about all the painful experiences I never got. Give me the money to go. So that's how I found out about the possibility of studying in the U.S. And that first year I applied, didn't get in. I ended up going to Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
From Ghana, I applied, and then I got here. So that's how the path happened for me. And I'm not saying, I think the change, even if I had not made it to the US, by the time I was going to Ghana, whether I had stayed in Zambia, my life had changed because my mind had changed. I was never going to, yeah, I was already feeling uncomfortable going back home. When I would go home, I would just seeing I would just be seeing, I was just like, this is how we do things.
Yeah.
I'll be at home. I'm just watching. Like, I mean, I love my family. I think we're a very happy bunch. We make jokes. So, but I was just like, this one is an anyama zone. Well,
Ah.
I went to the friend's house. Whatever I wanted, So you just start to watch. I'm like, wait, this one is anyama with other people right now. I'm just the person who went to their house. They were giving me 3 pieces.
I
Oh wow.
swear.
Yeah.
I
I'm
swear
like,
I had a similar experience.
I was like, I was like, you visit, and that put me with the host family when I was trying to write my SATs in Zambia. The woman lived in Kablonga. So I went to stay there. The next door, there was a sauna. I was sitting in a sauna, like, that broke my whole experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was living in this really nice house there, the swimming pool outside. We were going into the sauna, running into this, and it felt possible. Like I'd lived this, and then you go back home, and I'm just watching. I'm just like in my room. Tilimo watatu.
Mm.
My ST. I know there's a thing like I was just changing. It's too hot. It's too cold. I was taking a long time. I was making a bucket to get the mines when the name. How long can you say it? It's funny, but it's small things. When I went home, I was just like, I was like watching. You start to live out. You have an outer body experience, and I think when that changes, even whether I'd stayed in Zambia, for me, I would have wanted to strive for more.
Sounds to me like, exploring other environments kind of does something to you and it
Yeah.
pushes you to want more. But I also want to take you back to the entire experience that you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I look at it in two ways. Seeing good things or being exposed and seeing all those nice things that you're not currently experiencing can do either one of two things. In your case, it made you want more and work hard to try and achieve those things, right? But then it can also make you feel, so down, like you're lacking this much, and you might feel like you can never really get that far. So for someone out there who's watching, what are some of the practical things that you might say,
Yeah.
who maybe if they're in that situation, or they know someone who's in that situation?
Yeah. Two things. So I understand your question very well, but I think the biggest appeal, even though the materialistic part was there, it was the type of individuals these people were. When I was interacting with them, they seemed to have an intelligence that I had not seen. They were asking, when you're conversing with someone, you can feel like the intellect of this person. And I was just like, how do I be like this person? So it was also like I wanted to think like they were thinking.
Yeah.
One, even if the like materialistic aspect, and this is people, let's say when I said when I went to Zimbabwe and they had studied in the US and like we were having these conversations, they had all were doing programs in Zimbabwe. They were talking about helping people. There was that aspect of like they did this, they came back, they were trying to raise. awareness in their communities. They were trying to be the hand that they were not. So I think I was also coming from that perspective. I'm like, actually, you can go here and you can bring these opportunities back home. There's a lot of hope in that. So number
Yeah.
two, the question you come to in the beginning, I didn't have that. The question you asked me happened to me in the US when I'd come here, and I was like, there's no way that at the same time that I come and I live this experience, I went back and I visited home and it broke my reality. There's no way that at the same time that I'm sitting on this campus, I'll decide I want food right now. Me and my friends will order on an app. The food
Yeah.
will come here to our doorstep. The same time, I have a relative who sleeps hungry.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time that I come here, at every event you go to, there's free food in the US. Like
It's a
they
must.
it's a must. If you don't bring food, we're not coming to your event.
Of course. Of course.
We're not showing up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But to see, I was like, no way at the same time is there this. Does that mean our situation is all bad? I mean, I also don't want to paint black and white pictures. I think there's
Yeah.
many people living in good situations in Zambia, but I'm talking of my specific situation where I came from an underprivileged background. Now I was juxtaposing. When you go into an academic institution, they're giving you the best that this place also has to offer. So it doesn't mean every US person is going through this. They're homeless people in the US, but I'm saying my
Plenty.
experience now, I'm juxtaposing being in this place where I'm having so many resources.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you spend money, you're counting. You buy like a book and it's $80. I converted $80
To Kwanzaa.
to what? I'm like, we're just going to spend that on a book,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, you even here. I think the biggest thing was, you have to do groceries. You go get groceries, you spend 150.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I almost didn't want to buy things because I $150 in one day. Oh my friend,
35. Let's spend that
you want
35.
5. I'll just take it 3 5.
Salary teacher, okay?
Sa- That's the salary of what
No
someone
shade. No
Shoprite.
shade.
No, no shade. I'm just saying that's someone working in Shoprite is being paid what I'm using to go buy groceries.
Yeah.
I think I felt very I got depressed at some point. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was too much. It became too much that it got me depressed. Like I was unable to live here and enjoy. Or just
Yeah.
live my life. I couldn't because I was like, this world is unfair.
Yeah.
The world is unfair.
So let me ask you this, and I'm glad you've taken this approach. There's a question I asked Jackson last time. I don't know if you remember. It's something to do with survivor's guilt,
Mm.
where you're in this great place, you're enjoying all of this, and then when you look back, you're like, ah, there's that, and so it puts you in this awkward space where you want to enjoy. You know you've worked so hard for this,
Yeah.
but then you're also looking. It's a natural thing. You're looking back and you're like, oh wow, maybe I can help out. But the also other natural thing is you can't help everyone. So how do you strike that balance? And I want to hear from both of you on this.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Have I learned? I don't know
Mm,
yet, but I think it's putting things into perspective because yes, $150 is what someone will be getting paid. But the
mhm.
truth is, the lifestyle here requires like I couldn't live without like like if I sent it to someone home, it would be a lot of money for them. But also I don't have surplus money. Like
Yeah.
and you're working on campus to have that same $150 because you actually can't eat without getting it. Like for someone in Zambia, that would become money to spend, splurge. But for you, it's like the necessity to just live. It's just
Right.
necessity to just live here. So it's also I had to be like I feel so many things, but I'm just like the truth is I'm not going to survive
Hmm.
here too if I'm always looking back. And like yes, this money can help you, but I actually don't have surplus to help. And I'm like, where do I start to? Like where do I start?
Yeah.
Where do I start? And like, if I don't, let's say, if I don't buy the textbook at the beginning, I don't have, like, I would, let me advance myself to a point to when I can get to a point to pull all of us out. Because they said you can't give from an empty glass.
No.
Yep.
I have to make sure that, I think it's a paradox because I'm living in two conflicted worlds that are a bit different. But me, when you
Mhm.
bring me in the US, I'm a poor person in the US.
Yep.
I had to realize that I'm actually poor in the US. I'm poor compared to my
Yeah.
friends. My friends are like, oh, tonight, let's go doing this. And I'm just like, you guys are just spending money every day, or like, let's go do this, let's go do this. Me, I can come out once a week for events. To just
Yeah.
because when I spend that money, I'm going home and I'm having headaches. Say, "What? I spent $50. Well, so I'm just actually realizing like I'm actually a poor person in the US. Even if having $50 in Zambia would make me look like I have money. I'm not living in Zambia. I'm living in a place where that like is requiring a lot more money. So that was number one. Realizing that I'm actually not in a good, so I like adding that context. When you add this context, I'm not in a good position. That was
Mhm.
number one. And have I fully survived it? No. I go
Mhm.
back and forth. But I think I
Yeah.
found a little bit of peace in saying whenever I start to think too much, I'm like, add context to this. Like I'm like, let me add my context to this. Yes. And also the truth is sometimes your friends will be like, just send me some like $50, Kashan. The truth is I'm going to classes, I'm working 20 hours a week. And like you also have to be your own advocate. Like,
Yeah.
and I know that it's a privilege to work 20 hours a week and also go to school. That's a very big privilege because I know my friends who would want to do that. But like
Mhm.
which job are they going to get here? We get jobs that works with your schedule. Right? I'm like, okay, I can work 2 hours here, then I'll go to class, then I'll come back later, I'll work 4 hours here. They will accept that. That's just what the system is. But at the same time, without any of that, I can't live here. So I'm just like, there's context and there's a lot that takes from you. It means I'm sacrificing sleep sometimes. I'm sacrificing like, just having a social life that comes easy sometimes in Zambia than, because I'm carrying so much. And also some of my friends, I'm like, your parents pay for your school fees.
Yeah.
Like, and they give you pocket money. Me, no one is that for me. Even if my parents wanted to, they don't have the money. If they converted their money, the money they can manage to send me, we convert it here. It's
$10.
change. Bro, keep that $10. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm just like, the thing is, I'm also here by myself. So I'm like, I need to get to a position where I can actually help. And I'm not there right now. And if right now I'm draining everything I have, I
Mhm.
start to mentally carry all those problems. A point I was mentally carrying the problems. Then I'm missing classes. I'm doing bad academic. If I lose my scholarship, we're all in the same situation.
Yeah.
So I have to know I have to pour into myself and be selfish about it as much as I need to get to a place that I can actually do the real helping. And I know right now you might not understand it. Like you might be like sending a what you got $10, and I'm like, you are one person saying send me $10. There's five other people who are wanting to send them $10. I have to buy groceries to eat, to live
Mhm.
on. I have to buy lotion. Everything you go is expensive. So
Yeah.
something that I go back and forth, but I think sitting down and just giving myself the context. How about you, Jackson?
Yeah, for me, I think I did explain this a little bit. For me, my mindset is so set that if I if I say this is gonna be done in this way, it's gonna be done in that way. And so feeling that type of way, of course we do get these moments where you're like, I'm doing way better, especially when you start converting. Now you're working on a campus job and you get paid, you're like, Zambia, but so and so. Once you start
Mhm.
doing that, yes, you're gonna feel some type of way. But I think I trained, I don't know how I did it, but I think I trained my mind to, like you said, Agnes, like perspective is very important. The way you see things, on what lenses are you putting that on? Uh, if I put on the lenses of, no, I'm a Zambian who is from Kanyama, because that's where I am from. You're from Kanyama, no. Of course, it's gonna look like you are somewhere up there, but you're in the United States, bro. When you go out
Yeah.
to buy groceries, like you said, you want to spend $150. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you're spending 3,500 kwacha. You are spending $150, and that is not as much as it sounds. So, me feeling some type of way, I think I trained myself not to think that type of way. My family, I'm lucky. They understand. If I cannot support, I tell them, no, guys, you know what? I need to do ABCD, and then they'll understand. My friends as well, I surrounded myself with people that either know life in the United States, or they are exposed enough to understand when I explain these things to them. So I don't feel some type of way. I say things the way it is. If somebody like who is not as close to me start asking for things like not ask for $10, I don't even respond to such messages, but I just I'm just like, you are just unnecessary stress. I'm not gonna look at you. Even if I explain to you, you will not even understand. So I don't even waste energy, and I just focus on me and what my family thinks. And it's a daily struggle, but I think I've trained myself good enough to navigate, working, these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
appreciate your mindset. Wow. Yeah, I appreciate. I'm trying to get there. I think I'm way better than I was like freshman year. But
yeah.
yeah, it's still
Sometimes you gotta be fair, because if we are always so sympathetic, no, I understand the situation, bruh. You won't go anywhere. Like we've stated, I think sometime during this episode, life is unfair. So if you're always looking at it from a lenses of let's make things equal, you will never reach that stage. I'm telling you. So let's just try to look at things from a point of where you
perspective. Yeah,
are, the perspective that you are looking at it from. Don't always try
yeah.
to compare things. Uzambo sana sotana mukanyama. Ufola ndarama ya teacher who's spending a football with your friends.
Okay. Well,
Wait. Let me plug in my laptop. I'm dead.
that's
What about you,
interesting.
Nelson?
No,
But
I think,
also, I think there's beauty in that though. The beauty in that juxtaposition too means that I have raised the standard of what I think is possible. One,
yeah.
and the power in that, I think, to stay in a situation, you have to feel like that's the most that the world can offer. And I'm like, if there's societies today that if someone today here in the US, if someone is employed as a US citizen, which we don't have those privileges, you get an unemployment check every month.
Yeah.
I'm just like, if there's societies which have built things to help people like that, like how can we get there? And understanding that even these societies being at this position is not because they have better leadership than we do, not because the people here are significantly smarter than we are, because we're interacting with these people. I think we do have an inferiority complex as Africans. We see these things, we watch them in TV, we're like "Nivachi Vazungu," of that place, because there are people who've literally said no one thinks like a white man. White men, they think like they are more intelligent. People believe that they're not, but you have to understand they have benefited off of the backs of our own people to be
Yeah.
able to have all these things in excess. These big countries are countries that are looting from so-called developing countries to be able to do things like that. And I'm just like, when we start to understand, we need. I'm glad that I learned about those things. I understand how we're keeping them rich by our poverty. There's an interest in Africa still remaining poor, and it's in that learning that we're like, let's dismantle the system,
Yeah.
and we can start to think about. So we shouldn't be. I want Zambians to know, when you see things, you watch things. People here already started building self-driving cars.
Hmm.
Last time I was working with a company that's building self-driving cars. They'll come here before they will ever reach in Zambia. And I'm saying, where do they get the material to build those things? African countries.
Yeah.
For so
Yeah.
cheap. For so cheap. And it's not because they are more intelligent. It's because one, these universities have been going for years. This country is way older than Zambia. Zambia is just 57 years. In 57.
Yeah.
69.
Yeah, I think 57. African countries have the
Should be
fastest.
60 this year.
Yeah, we have the fastest growing economies, though. It means we can accelerate our growth, but we have to understand in which ways are we giving away our wealth? How can our own wealth benefit us? So when you're watching these things, you're hearing, oh, the US is building self-driving cars, shan, shan. Don't be like, oh, they're so smart. Ask, why aren't we doing it?
Yeah.
Ask, how come they can have that, we can't have that right now? We're actually playing into this system. We are holding this system of oppression that doesn't benefit us by believing that we deserve to be down. Because when you really convince someone that they're not, like they're not it, that's it. That's what they've convinced us. That's why we watch these things. They stunt in our faces, and we're just like, oh, like that's just where people they can do that. They can have those things. Why can't you have those things? Why can't we have those things? We should be asking because we're convinced that we deserve to be in the positions we're in. We don't. There's an unjust system here happening, and every
Yeah.
day they look from your countries. So it's about bringing that to light. They're
Yeah.
not better because people here think smarter than we do. We lack resources, which we have, but they used to develop these countries than our own countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a famous saying from Emuke Makitu.
Mm.
He said something like, I come from a rich country where poor people live, right? Like our country is so rich, but
Yeah,
why are we so poor? And
yeah,
taking it back to how you put it, it's like it's a whole mindset, right?
yeah.
You can convince someone of something and they'll believe in it. Explains why we all believed in wrestling. Like that's acting, but we believed that was true, and it's a power of the mind, you know. So it seems like all this inferiority complex has been embedded in our system for so long that
We
it's
don't.
all we know.
We don't, and even when an African is doing well, oh my God, but like we want to find other explanations for why an African one can come up with an invention. Or like
Yeah.
I was in a conversation with someone, and they were saying how some dude had found a way of making electricity XYZ with, I think it P or something. In
Hmm.
my where I was living, there was a dude who just used to do experiments, and we had gone to talk to him with another friend of mine. Like, and people were saying he should hide. They were like, hide those things. Like, what's that called? Like, hide what you did. Like, people will bewitch you. And I'm saying, are you understanding that that's the culture in which we are sitting down on innovation? I was shocked to find there's so many innovations that were actually made by Africans. They'll sell them though. What? Because they don't have the capacity to mass produce. I think it
Hmm.
was like a Zambian recently made like I think something that reads like brainwaves or something, sold it to China. And now if that's a big device, we'll be saying Vavazung, Vavazung. The kid that
Yeah.
discovered the thing, just there's no where are you going to take it in Zambia to someone to take you seriously, to fund you, to make a company. You can get fast money though if you sell it to people, innovators in China and they start to mass produce.
Hmm.
And we're not understanding that they're actually making we are building this invention. We just don't have the money. We don't have the money, we don't have the systems to empower black innovation.
Right.
I'm
Hmm.
just like we have to, it's about the mind. We have to believe in us. We have to believe. I'm like, we have a jet fair every year.
Hmm.
People come up with invention. In my school, there's a girl who was doing research on chickens. And you know how people here they feed GMOs to make chickens grow faster. She was actually using like natural herbs to grow chickens. And my at my school with my teacher, the same dude, Mr. Makukula, the one I was there, he was into experiments. They were growing
Hmm.
chickens faster. I took them to Jets, won like third prize. I didn't hear anyone take big companies that do chickens. Why didn't they come in attendance?
I think jet fairs should be televised.
The innovation is there somewhere. There's no connecting. There needs to be innovation. There needs to be industry connected.
Yeah.
Why don't you invite big companies to attend Jets fairs?
Yeah.
They can actually find innovations there that they can fund because they have the money that it can help their businesses. Big if there was a big chicken company there, that's your goal over there. You're growing more chickens than you were growing before. A kid discovered that she was a grade 9. People
Wow.
discover so many things at Jets fairs. Me being in Jets, so many cool innovations. They don't go anywhere. They'll give you a prize. You are number one, number two. Why aren't you pushing those things to go? We have the innovation. Let's build the infrastructure.
And I feel like that's where the frustration starts off, right? Like imagine such a grade nine. You have this invention that you firmly believe in, it's tangible, it's there, you can see it, and then you just win third prize, it ends there, nothing comes out of it. At that point, you're like, well, even if I do anything else, nothing will really come out of it. So now you've killed that dream right there, and that
Yeah.
curious nature of that person. So we
It's,
really need to look into it. Yeah.
yeah,
We
there's a
maybe
lot
we
of
need to start televising it so that, more people can see it or something like
big thing. It should be a big thing. Tell it like invest in the. It should actually be a big thing because cool stuff comes out from there. And I'm
I think
like,
it should be a conference.
huh?
It should be a
Conference.
conference.
It should be a
Yeah.
conference. Even if you're not participating, you should
You
be
can
attending.
go.
You should
Yeah.
be attending just for the like you're seeing what people are doing in your country. You actually see
Yeah.
that innovation is not white.
Nope.
Innovation can come from anyone who sees a problem and thinks about how do I solve this problem.
Yeah. Because
Who?
that's how these people over here do it, right? Like,
Yeah,
every year you're going to conferences, you're seeing like-minded people or unlike-minded people. You
yeah.
get to see the research that they're doing. You
In
get to
every
see your peers in
in
every
every
field,
and it's just
you
not
know.
science. And I'm just
No.
history. History teachers are so important. We're in this
So,
place
so important.
because we don't understand our history and how it relates to the future. You just teach us, okay, there was Shaka, there was Moshe Shu, then there was this person.
Ujiji.
Livingstone met Stanley at Ujiji.
Listen,
What am I supposed to do with that?
listen to the saddest thing about that. Livingstone, a white man, comes to this country, finds something called Mosotunya. He says he has discovered the Victoria Falls. He sends news
Mhm.
to his queen, who has never been to Zambia, Queen Victoria. Names a thing that the locals will call Mosotunya, Victoria Falls. Today, in every book, it's called Victoria Falls. Like, bro, if you are in your house, a foreigner comes in your house, okay? You have a table. They're like, this table is nice. I'm going to name this table after my mother. In your
Yeah.
house, and you know what we do? We name
Mhm.
where he landed. He's so great. Like, what is Livingstone? Why would you name Livingstone after David Livingstone? What did he do for us?
Yeah.
What
Mhm.
did man do for? He was one of the first people who brought imperialistic white people into Zambia, which led us to colonialism. That's who we are empowering today. Rename Livingstone. Livingstone should not be
Mosodunya.
rename the
Yeah.
Victoria Falls to be Mosotunya, like it was being called by the locals before. You didn't discover anything. And I'm like,
Mhm.
where is that education? Where is that? Those are simple things we can change right now. Push the
Yeah.
president, pass that declaration, change. That's not Victoria Falls. The whole Livingstone should not be named Livingstone. What did Livingstone do for us? There are so many great people. So many name is Simon Masakapwepo if you may. So that we can be asking why is it named Simon Masakapwepo? You'll be understanding they were freedom fighters. We have our own great people. Alice Lenshina, one of the most powerful women in her time in the 1960s, because she ran the biggest African church. When people were bringing Christianity to this nation and saying everything that was African is pagan, she was teaching
Mhm.
people how to worship, incorporating African knowledge that they had. All these
Yeah.
figures, Dr. Nkoloso, he was the first African. He was running a space program in Zambia.
Oh
When
yeah.
people were wanting to go to space, he started an academy here, wanting to take land Zambia on the moon. Where isn't that in our history books? If we knew that
Yeah.
there were people who research going to the moon, you think we wouldn't have started? How come there are no innovators who we learn about? None. Who are
Yeah.
Zambian? Our textbooks, we learn about names we don't even know. We learn about fruits we don't even eat. Like, are
It's
you really? Hire teachers
it's
to write
yeah.
textbooks. Hire researchers to write our own textbooks. That makes sense to us.
Mhm.
That teach us about creating a Zambia we want to live in. So I'm like, I need to someone, whoever is going to be a minister of education, if you get to it before me, rewrite, hire Zambian teachers, actual researchers to write books for Zambian kids that they can relate. If you're reading about people like you, it's possible. It becomes possible.
Mhm.
Change the rules. Let's make an education system that works for us as Africans.
Sure. We are
If
60
you
years in.
cut our hair, you want to cut it. Open up salons near the bring an innovation that you just put your head, it combs your hair. Then open and like, if you're so worried, why should we cut our hair? Why don't we make it easier?
Yeah. Last question for you, Agnes.
Yeah.
Um, you talked about effecting change from abroad can be somewhat difficult, and I think me and Jackson can partly agree with that, which is why we're using whatever tools we can come across. Social media, YouTube, such a powerful tool that we can tap into and just try to put all these views across. Do you have any plans of going back?
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the ways in which I'm sure one or two people who might be watching this might want to reach out to you to say, hey, I saw this, I would like to get into contact with you. Maybe you can provide them with, I don't know, something you haven't mentioned here. But mainly the question is, do you have any plans of going back? And what does that look like for you?
I think personally, I mean, you have to. I've had a full circle moment. I've had to live outside of Zambia to understand that I was the happiest when I lived in Zambia.
Word.
So, I'll go back to Zambia for sure to live in the country when I don't really know yet.
Mhm,
Because mainly I want to go into AI. That's my major, robotics. Most of the research is being done. So when I get experience, one of my biggest goals is to go and open an AI and robotics research institute.
mhm,
That's my goal career wise, back home. When I
mhm,
start that, I want to gain some experience working in the field, gain a network, look at funding opportunities, come back and start this program. So
mhm.
going back to the country, yes, and this is one of my biggest goals. I think there's a lot of innovation, and being in JETS, I was seeing people who there was this interest in like science and doing something new. So I want to take the next step of where does it go? That research institute will be able to host some of those conferences, bring in different
Yeah,
kids, throw out challenges out there, put money in the picture. Whoever
yeah,
solves this, you win this. These days, sorry, we do these days we do hackathons here where they give you a question, and some are even as big as $20 million or 20,000, whatever. They just like they throw them out to students. They're like, whoever you solve this problem, you win prizes. I'm like, I've so much. I just want to do a lot in the space of exploring interest. There's no really big goal of like, oh, I'm gonna create the biggest this. I mean, I want there to be a space for this innovation and see what comes out of it. Be the
mhm,
space to bridge industry and research, but also to really focus on research, because that's where you
yeah.
do come up with most of these innovations we see started with researchers, and how we're not putting money into research. Like
I'll I'll
that's
I'll tell you
why,
one thing.
yeah.
As a person who's working in research, sometimes it's amazing just how much money can be pumped into research. And sometimes you ask yourself, it's like half of
I'm,
this research will never get out there. But
yeah,
that one research, that gets out there would
that
be
gets up
revolutionary.
is revolutionary, and I think
Yeah,
that's something that's profound about this, like, coming to school here. People thought this out. Yes,
yeah,
there might not be research that's groundbreaking every year, but once in a while, most of the big things we see comes from research. Even not even just for research, for learning purposes. When you want
yeah,
to write papers, who do you reference? Research papers. How many Zambians are writing research papers that are out there that you can reference when you're trying to do research in a project? In any way, some of the research is just knowledge to keep out there.
yeah,
Like, you might not have a use for it, but another person one day will be researching something and they'll need a question answered, and they'll be like, how does this work with this? You were the one who did that research and it's out there.
yeah,
So I'm just like, we're not really focusing. I mean, also this is my assumption as someone who hasn't gone to school in Zambia. I know that there's a final project that they do. I heard of in your last year of school, and people say there's so many cool ideas. Like, they actually have to do research and go into the field, collect data. Some people, they end up
mhm,
just powered up, and
yeah,
when you pass, you just did the project. People get funded for these things. Some identify students who are actually coming up with groundbreaking ideas, encourage them to apply for funding to actually realize some of that research that they did in their final year. It shouldn't just be like a thing you do to just pass and to stop. Like if people are actually interacting with the material they're learning, like it's yours, this could be a project that you can do. Like people are coming in, you're giving them examples of people who did a senior project, ended up building something really big.
Yeah.
Even when you want to do that project, you think, what can I want to do? And that's what they're always asking us here. I was asking my friend was telling me she had to do a project. The professor gave them like topics. Mostly here it's rare that professors give us topics. Like unless like it's a specific thing. There's both happens, but there's also a lot of your own self. What would
Yeah.
you like to do? You learn about something, then how would you do this? What would you like to do? So most of the projects that I'll do, I'm even like, wow, I can't believe I'm getting credit to do the things I want.
You want, yeah.
You know, because it's not a thing I'd ever like thought in Zambia. Like learning can be yours. Like picking the classes that you want to take of so many classes you read out of interest. I took a swimming class. I'm getting credit just because I wanted to learn how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those classes can you do that, you know, at those at schools? I mean, so yes, I want to come back to Zambia. I think just personally I've been the happiest living home. I don't know when right now, but like I said, I really want to open up a research institute and focus on research, especially in STEM, because I mean, that's my profession. I can say that now because I'm graduated.
Congratulations once more. Very empowering to hear from a STEMINIST and get educated on so many different topics. So thank you so much. And I feel
Thank
like there's so much more that we can cover, that we should cover, that we will cover.
Yeah,
So I think we'd need to get you back for another episode where we
for sure.
dive deeper into
For
more of
sure.
the pressing topics.
And I think you guys are doing important work. Like me and Caris always talked about. I think like we were so happy. We're like, bro, they're doing it. Like, and I mean, we're rooting for you. Hopefully, this
Mhm.
gets out there. These ideas, like you put them out there. You never know. I hope I hope it changes something. But I think the fact that you believe in something and you're taking action,
Mhm.
despite all the other commitments you have to do here in the US, there's always so many excuses you can make for why you don't start something. You guys
Yeah.
have started it, and like rooting for you, and like this, I hope it touches many people. People hear it, at the very least, changes how you think about something. I think that this is groundwork. This is important work, and we need more of it. And this is an important platform. So, like rooting for you guys. Hopefully, yeah, one day I watch it on TV. This becomes like a network.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for also taking the time out of your day, and congratulations once more on your upcoming graduation.
Let's get this down.